Every one of us is building a future right now, whether we realize it or not. The results you wake up to tomorrow are created by the habits you practice today. Life pays dividends, but it only pays them to those who deposit the right actions consistently. You can't withdraw from an account you never invested in, and you can't expect transformation from habits that keep you average. If you want abundance, if you want growth, if you want a life that reflects your true potential, it starts with building habits that pay you back again and again. The first investment you make is not in money, not in business, not in relationships. It's in your mind. Your thoughts are the down payment on your destiny. You cannot think in scarcity and expect to live in abundance. You cannot think in limitation and expect to walk in freedom. When you invest in your mind, when you choose learning over entertainment, when you choose growth over gossip, you start to change the way you see opportunities. Most people miss opportunities, not because opportunity isn't present, but because their mindset isn't trained to recognize it. Habits that elevate your thinking elevate your life. But investing in your mind is only the beginning. You must build habits that compound, not consume. There are habits that drain your time, your energy, your focus, and then there are habits that multiply your value. The people who create extraordinary results aren't working harder than everyone else. They're simply doing the things that pay off long after the effort is gone. Reading, exercising, planning, practicing. These habits keep paying dividends. Scrolling, complaining, procrastinating. These habits keep collecting fees. Every day you must ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now paying me back or costing me? Because the habits you repeat create the life you inherit. And none of that happens without shaping your environment. Your environment is the silent architect of your habits. You can have a big dream, but surround yourself with small thinkers and never move an inch. You can have great potential, but stay in draining environments and never activate it. Proximity determines possibility. When you put yourself around people who stretch you, challenge you, inspire you, your standards rise automatically. Your habits rise with your standards. You want to change your life drastically, change your environment intentionally. Discipline is the force that locks all of this into place. Motivation is a spark, discipline is the engine. Motivation feels good when it shows up, but discipline shows up whether you feel good or not. Winners don't rely on how they feel, they rely on what they decided. Discipline turns thought into action, and action into momentum, and momentum compounds like interest. The more disciplined you are with small habits, the easier big habits become. Then comes the power of daily actions, not grand gestures, not once a month breakthroughs. Daily, small, consistent actions that outlive your excuses. People overestimate what they can do in a moment of hype and underestimate what they can do in a year of consistency. Your future is not built in a day, it is built daily. Every small step you take is a seed planted. Every day you show up is a seed watered. And eventually that garden becomes a harvest that people call success, but you know it was built one habit at a time. Finally, track your growth like an investor tracks their portfolio. You can't improve what you refuse to inspect. Measure your progress. Track your time. Track your goals. Track your habits. When you measure something, you bring attention to it. And when you pay attention, you improve. Every habit becomes more powerful when you see its results. Your life is a return on the habits you practice. Nothing is random. Nothing is accidental. Every outcome has a habit behind it. When you choose habits that build you, habits that strengthen you, habits that multiply your value, you create a future you don't have to chase. A future that comes chasing you. Habits that pay dividends don't just make your life better, they make you better. And when you become better, everything connected to you rises with you. Invest in your mind before you invest anywhere else, because your mind is the blueprint for everything you will ever build in your life. You cannot produce beyond the level of your thinking. You cannot rise higher than the thoughts you consistently allow. Every result you want, wealth, health, relationships, purpose, begins with the internal architecture of your mindset. If the structure is weak, the outcomes will always collapse. If the foundation is strong, you can withstand pressure, distractions, setbacks, and still move forward with clarity. Most people try to change their life by changing circumstances, but circumstances don't change until the thinker behind them changes. If you plant the wrong seeds in the right soil, you still get the wrong harvest. In the same way, if your thoughts are rooted in fear, insecurity, scarcity, and doubt. Then even when opportunity shows up, you will reject it, minimize it, or sabotage it. The greatest limitation is not lack of resources, but lack of mental readiness. That's why the first and most profitable investment you will ever make is in elevating your thinking. When you invest in your mind, you start to see possibilities where others see problems. You start to recognize opportunities others walk past. You start to make decisions based on vision instead of emotions. Your mind becomes tuned to growth instead of survival, to progress instead of excuses, to solutions instead of obstacles. This shift alone is worth more than any financial investment because it changes how you respond to life. Investing in your mind means choosing learning over entertainment, wisdom over noise, development over distraction. Most people want success but spend their time feeding their insecurities instead of feeding their potential. They scroll more than they study. They gossip more than they grow. They complain more than they commit, and then wonder why life doesn't change. But the moment you flip that equation, when you start reading, listening, studying, absorbing, sharpening, your entire reality begins to shift. Your habits of learning become your habits of earning. The person who invests in their mindset today becomes the person who makes better decisions tomorrow. You gain perspective, you gain strategy, you gain resilience, you gain awareness, and the more aware you become, the less life controls you and the more you control your life. When your mind is strong, you can lose everything and still rebuild. When your mind is weak, you can gain everything and still lose it. That's why wealthy people invest in their mindset before they invest in money. That's why leaders invest in their personal growth before they invest in big opportunities. They understand that the mind is the engine and everything else is the cargo. The engine must be upgraded before the load increases. Investing in your mind is the one habit that never stops paying dividends. It pays you in confidence. It pays you in clarity. It pays you in smarter decisions. It pays you in better relationships. It pays you in resilience when life gets loud. And it pays you in the ability to create the life you desire instead of accepting the one you inherited. When you elevate your mind, you elevate your life, and once your mind expands with new knowledge, it can never go back to its old limits. Build habits that compound, not consume, because your life is shaped far more by what you repeat daily than what you do occasionally. Most people fail not because they lack potential, but because they keep practicing habits that drain them instead of habits that develop them. They invest their time into actions that feel good in the moment, but leave them empty in the long run. Compounding habits are different. They grow your value even when you're not paying attention. Consuming habits shrink your potential every time you give in to them. The difference between these two types of habits is the difference between people who rise and people who remain stuck. Consuming habits take your time, your energy, your focus, and give you nothing back. They offer comfort now, but cost you later. Scrolling endlessly, arguing, procrastinating, staying busy but not productive. These habits waste your life in small, daily increments. And the danger is that they feel harmless, but their long-term cost is massive. Compounding habits are slow at first, almost invisible. Reading one page doesn't change your life. Saving a little money doesn't make you wealthy. Practicing for 10 minutes doesn't make you an expert, but over time, those small, consistent deposits grow into something powerful. They multiply, they elevate your skill, your mindset, your opportunities, and your results. Compounding habits build your character, sharpen your mind, strengthen your discipline, expand your capacity. The people who create extraordinary success aren't doing magic. They're simply consistent with the kinds of habits that continue paying dividends long after the work is done. They don't chase instant gratification. They chase long-term transformation. They understand that small actions repeated often enough will eventually overpower the biggest excuses, the toughest seasons, and the hardest challenges. When you choose compounding habits, reading daily, learning daily, planning your goals, working on your craft, taking care of your health, you're creating a personal economy that grows even when you're not consciously thinking about it. You become someone who improves naturally over time. Your discipline compounds, your confidence compounds, your skills compound. And eventually, the gap between you and everyone still living off consuming habits becomes undeniable. The question you must ask yourself daily is simple. Is what I'm doing right now building me or draining me? Because your habits are either seeds or leaks. They're either depositing into your future or withdrawing from it. And the painful truth is that many people are going broke mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially because their habits keep charging them a fee. But when you commit to compounding habits, your life begins to grow in ways you didn't think were possible. You become more focused, more intentional, more capable. You start stacking small wins that turn into momentum, and momentum becomes transformation. Build habits that compound, not consume, because the person you will become years from now is hidden inside the habits you practice today. Your habits are shaping you. Make sure they're shaping you into someone you're proud of. Upgrade your environment to upgrade your outcomes. Because no matter how strong your dreams are, your environment will either nurture them or choke them. You can have the right desire, but the wrong surroundings, and still end up stuck in the same place. Environment is not just where you live, it's the people you listen to, the conversations you engage in, the content you consume, and the standards you allow. Your environment is shaping you in ways you don't always notice. It is influencing your beliefs, your habits, and your expectations without asking for permission. You rise to the level of the environments that challenge you or fall to the level of the environments that tolerate your excuses. If you're surrounded by people who settle, you'll start settling. If you're surrounded by people who complain, you'll start complaining. But if you're surrounded by those who think bigger, act bolder, move with purpose, and push for growth, you'll start expanding without even trying. That's the power of proximity. You don't just learn from people, you absorb from them. Your environment is like a thermostat. If it's set low, it doesn't matter how fired up you get. Eventually, your internal temperature will drop back down to match it. But when you place yourself in an environment where excellence is normal, discipline is expected, and growth is the standard, you naturally rise to match that heat. You start expecting more from yourself. You start demanding more from your habits. You start believing more about what's possible. Some people aren't failing because they lack talent. They're failing because their environment keeps rewarding their limitations. They're surrounded by people who justify their procrastination, support their excuses, and encourage their comfort. You can't grow in a place that benefits from you staying the same. That's why upgrading your environment often requires upgrading your associations. Not abandoning people, but elevating your circle to include voices that inspire you, not ones that drain you. Your environment also includes what you consume daily. The books you read, the videos you watch, the conversations you allow, the energy you invite, these are all shaping your identity. If your environment is filled with negativity, drama, and distraction, you will mirror that. But if you feed yourself inspiration, education, and clarity, you will start moving with purpose, confidence, and direction. Sometimes upgrading your environment means creating a new one entirely. A clean workspace, a quiet room for thinking, a schedule that protects your focus, a routine that sets your tone. Sometimes the smallest environmental shift leads to the biggest internal shift. When you upgrade your environment, your outcomes change automatically. You think differently, you act differently, you expect differently. You become aligned with success instead of fighting for it. Because success is not just built on habits, it's built on habitats. Surround yourself with people and places that pull out your best. Create an environment that reflects where you're going, not where you've been. When you upgrade your environment, you upgrade your life. Prioritize discipline over motivation because motivation is a visitor, but discipline is a resident. Motivation comes when it wants to, leaves when it feels like it, and shows up at the most unpredictable times. You can't build a transformed life on something that's inconsistent. Discipline, on the other hand, stays. Discipline doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for the right mood. It doesn't negotiate with your feelings. Discipline is the force that allows you to act, even when every emotion argues against it. Most people rely on motivation and wonder why their results fluctuate. They feel inspired today and lazy tomorrow. They start strong and disappear when life gets tough. That's because motivation is emotional, and emotions change. Discipline is a decision, and decisions anchor you. When you choose discipline, you're choosing consistency over chaos, commitment over comfort, responsibility over excuses. Discipline is what builds momentum. Every time you act when you don't feel like it, you strengthen a muscle inside you that makes the next hard action easier. It compounds. One disciplined day becomes a disciplined week, then a disciplined month, and suddenly your entire identity shifts. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who does the work, someone who can be counted on. That identity is far more powerful than a motivational spike. Success doesn't respond to motivation, it responds to discipline. The breakthroughs you want, financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, come from doing the right things repeatedly, not occasionally. No one becomes excellent by accident. Excellence is engineered through disciplined habits, disciplined thinking, and disciplined action. Discipline is the bridge between desire and results. When motivation fades, discipline keeps your habits alive. When obstacles show up, discipline keeps your goals alive. When excuses start whispering, discipline silences them. It's easy to be motivated when everything feels good. But the real transformation happens on the days when you don't feel like doing anything and you still show up. Prioritizing discipline doesn't mean you ignore motivation. It means you don't depend on it. Motivation becomes a bonus, not the foundation. When you build a life based on discipline, motivation finds you working, not waiting. Motivation becomes fuel, not the engine. Discipline creates the freedom. People think motivation will give them freedom in your finances because you consistently manage wealth, freedom in your health because you consistently take care of your body, freedom in your purpose because you consistently sharpen your skills, freedom in your time because you consistently control your habits instead of letting your habits control you. When you choose discipline first, you choose to build a life that doesn't collapse every time your feelings shift. You choose stability, strength, and structure. You choose growth over comfort. You choose long-term rewards over short-term pleasure. Prioritize discipline over motivation, because motivation might start the journey, but discipline finishes it. Create daily actions that outlive your excuses, because at the end of the day, your life is not shaped by what you intended to do. It is shaped by what you actually did. Excuses are comfortable, convincing, and often feel justified, but they have never produced progress for anyone. Action, even small action, has built more success than talent, luck, or timing. When you choose to take daily steps regardless of your mood, circumstances, or challenges, you begin to build a life that excuses can no longer hold hostage. Most people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect energy, the perfect clarity before taking action. That moment never comes. Perfection is a trap the average mind uses to stay exactly where it is. The truth is that progress belongs to those who act imperfectly but consistently. A small step taken today beats the perfect plan delayed until tomorrow. You don't need massive action. You need repeated action. You don't need giant breakthroughs. You need daily follow-through. Daily actions create momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in your life. When you show up every day, even in small ways, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. Every repetition is a vote. Every disciplined choice is a vote. Every time you override an excuse, you strengthen your identity. And eventually your identity becomes stronger than your excuses. Excuses are emotional. They show up when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when you're uncertain. But your actions can be structural. When you create daily habits, non-negotiables, you no longer debate with yourself. You simply do the work. You eliminate the mental noise and replace it with a rhythm that carries you forward, even on the days when your motivation has evaporated. Daily action also outlives excuses because it builds proof. When you take consistent action, you start seeing results, and results silence doubt. It's hard to convince yourself you can't when you're literally watching yourself do it every single day. It's hard to believe the lie that you're stuck when you see evidence that you're moving. Proof is more powerful than excuses. And remember, small actions accumulate. 1 page a day becomes a book. 10 push-ups a day becomes a strong body. 10 minutes of learning a day becomes expertise. 1 disciplined decision a day becomes a transformed life. People underestimate the power of small actions repeated relentlessly. But time rewards the consistent far more than the dramatic. Excuses die when action grows. Every step forward weakens the grip of procrastination, fear, and doubt. You don't need to defeat excuses in one big battle. You just need to outlast them with daily movement. Over time, your habits become so strong, your focus so stable, your purpose so clear that excuses lose their voice, Create daily actions that outlive your excuses, because your future depends on what you do every day, not what you say you'll do someday. Consistency beats intensity, action beats excuses, and daily commitment beats occasional effort every single time. Track your growth like an investor tracks their portfolio, because what you measure becomes what you master. Too many people want success but never take the time to examine whether their habits, their decisions, and their daily behaviors are actually leading them there. An investor doesn't throw money into random places and hope something works. They monitor, evaluate, adjust, and refine. They study patterns. They watch performance. They look at trends. They make decisions based on data, not emotions. You must treat your personal growth the same way. Most people drift through life without clarity, without metrics, without accountability. They rely on memory instead of measurement, and memory is unreliable. You think you worked hard, but the data might say you were inconsistent. You think you're progressing, but the lack of tracking shows you've been repeating the same cycle for months. Growth feels good emotionally, but measurement reveals the truth. And truth is what creates transformation. Tracking your growth is not about perfection, it's about awareness. When you know where you are, you can improve. When you know what's working, you can amplify it. When you know what's failing, you can fix it. Without tracking, you're guessing. With tracking, you're progressing. Awareness is the foundation of advancement. Just like an investor reviews their portfolio regularly, you must review your life. Track your habits. Track your progress toward your goals. Track your finances. Track how you spend your time. Track your energy levels. Track your skill development. Track your wins and your losses. These numbers don't define you, but they guide you. They give you clarity. They show you exactly where growth is happening and where growth is being blocked. When you measure your habits, something powerful happens. You become accountable to yourself. You see the truth in black and white. You recognize the gaps between who you say you want to be and how you actually show up. That gap doesn't shame you. It directs you. It gives you the blueprint on what needs to be improved next. Tracking also builds confidence. When you see progress, even small progress, it strengthens your belief. You start realizing, I am growing. I am becoming consistent. I am moving forward. That belief fuels more action, and more action fuels more growth. Over time, your life compounds the same way a smart investment grows, through consistent deposits and wise adjustments. Most people treat their life like a gamble. They hope things work out. They hope change happens. They hope success finds them. But hope is not a strategy. Tracking is. When you track your growth, you stop operating from emotion and start operating from intention. You make decisions with clarity, not confusion. You move with purpose, not randomness. Track your growth like an investor tracks their portfolio, because your life is the most valuable investment you will ever manage. When you measure it, you elevate it. When you study it, you strengthen it. And when you take growth seriously, life begins to reward you seriously. As we come to the close of this message, remember this: your life is the result of the habits you practice, the choices you make, and the actions you take consistently. Success is not an accident, and transformation is not a matter of luck. It is built day by day, habit by habit. When you invest in your mind, you raise the ceiling of what's possible. When you build habits that compound, you multiply your value over time. When you upgrade your environment, you align yourself with success. When you prioritize discipline, you create unstoppable momentum. When you take daily actions that outlast excuses, you prove your commitment to your future. And when you track your growth like an investor, you ensure that every effort is measured, refined, and amplified. The truth is simple. Your future will reflect the actions you consistently take today. The choices you make now, the routines you follow, the mindset you cultivate, they all pay dividends. If you embrace these habits, if you act with purpose and consistency, life will respond. Growth becomes inevitable, success becomes visible, and your potential becomes unstoppable. Start today. Invest in yourself. Take daily steps. Outlast your excuses and watch as the life you've imagined begins to materialize. Your habits are not small. They are the seeds of the extraordinary life you were meant to live. Build them wisely, nurture them consistently, and the dividends will follow.